Mr. Secretary, I think the American people are right to be demanding of Congress to hold BP accountable. Now, you've said in your testimony that you're sure they will pay all, or they've said they'll pay all legitimate costs, and you've elaborated on that to say that they'll pay all response costs, all damages, all costs related to cleanup, all economic damages. It sounds good, but what I picture happening is we'll exhaust the trust fund, which is not so large right now, and then spend years trying to recover money. And the fishing companies and the tourist businesses and everybody else will spend years trying to recover this. You said you've got a letter to the effect that this is good. I think we need more. 55 of us, I along with 55 co-sponsors, have legislation, the Big Oil Bailout Prevention Act, which would significantly raise the cap on liability, which is at the laughably small number of $75 million. Would you join us, would you support a legislative increase in the liability on behalf of American taxpayers, on behalf of the fisheries, on behalf of the small businesses and the tourism industry, on behalf of people all across America who want justice and accountability for the Big Oil Bailout Prevention Act, so that we can be sure that there is formal liability?
Congressman Holt, I'm going to have Deputy Secretary David Hayes respond to the specific question on the liability because he testified in another committee yesterday on the same question. Let me say two things before he speaks. The first is, from the executive branch side and the law that we currently have, we have pushed BP as far as we can, including getting their written and very public
within the law that we have.
Within the law that we have. Secondly, within the law that we have, there are also major exceptions to the liability limitation, including gross negligence and violation of operational regulations and a whole host of other things.
To be adjudicated over many years.
Some of them maybe. Okay, so we are doing what we can within the limits of the executive branch to make sure they're held accountable. In changing the law, we are supportive. The President sent a package here to Congress. There was testimony yesterday from the Department of Justice and Deputy Secretary David Hayes that focused in on the changes that we are supporting with respect to liability limitation. So I will have the Deputy Secretary address that issue.
Congressman, the administration yesterday took the position, and we take the position, that for the highest risk activities in terms of offshore oil and gas development, there should not be a limit in terms of liability on damages. And the administration would like to work with the Congress to establish essentially a sliding scale of potential liability caps that focus on the relative risks associated with the activities. But for the type of activity that occurred here, the administration does not believe there should be a liability cap.
Let me just say some of the discussion has had to do with the smaller or independent companies and their ability to pay. The consideration should not be that, but rather the ability to harm. A mom-and-pop operation, if you want to call it that, could do $1 billion worth of damage. So we have to keep that in mind. To follow on Mr. Flake's, Mr. Miller's, and the other concerns, what troubled Americans so much about this recent, the ongoing tragedy is that the Department of the Interior, with all of its agencies, including MMS, not only seemed not to know the answers to the questions, but they didn't even know what questions to ask. They didn't have in place a mechanism for figuring out even what the size of the leak was. Is it 1,000 barrels a day? No, it's 5,000. Well, no, maybe it's tens of thousands of barrels. Well, maybe it's over 100,000. You know, as Mr. Flake and Mr. Miller are saying, what were we spending our time doing? How can you assure the people that we've got an organization that is putting in place the procedures to deal with things. You know, this you say is unprecedented, but it was not unimaginable. In fact, it was not even unexpected. And yet the procedures for asking the right questions and getting the answers to those questions weren't in place.
Well, Congressman Holt, I would say that our view is we have been transparent from day one, as we always have in this administration, relative to providing information that we are requested to provide. And we do have a lot of this information that we have provided with respect to what happened. The issues relating to the investigation themselves, those are under investigation, and there will be findings. Those will all be made available to the public. Just last night or yesterday, the question of whether or not there would be live streaming of the so-called kill today was one of the questions that was addressed. We pushed for transparency, and so as a result of the White House and our intervention, there is full transparency of what's happening on the shore. Now, there is a lot of information that we have provided, not only through the hearings here in the Congress on the oil spill response plans that were in place in the Gulf of Mexico and a whole host of other things. There are science issues which are important that we want to make sure that we get right because of the consequences. And so I can only tell you that even as we are speaking here today, one of the top scientists in the world, Marcia McNutt, who I brought in to run the United States Geological Survey, is working with a group of scientists to give us our United States of America an independent affirmation of what the spill amounts have been. That is to say, we're not dependent on BP or anybody else to give us that information.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. Certainly, we all have questions as to who was at fault, what happened, and we're going to have time to be able to figure all that out.